In March of 2020, I was beginning a sabbatical at my prior congregation when COVID hit. I remember thinking that I would just pause the sabbatical to attend a few meetings. The subject of those meetings was whether to cancel the Purim Carnival or not. It seems sort of ridiculous now, a year and a half later. The meetings, I told myself, would only take a few hours, which would allow us to appropriately deal with Purim so we could be back on track for Pesach, and then I would be able to resume my sabbatical. Well, canceling Purim turned into canceling everything in person, moving it all online, rescheduling B'nai Mitzvah, closing classrooms, forming networks to check in on older folks, losing sleep about the synagogue finances, getting a full education about the new PPP loan from the government and how to apply, and all the while trying to support people as we as a community processed it all, to say nothing of the COVID funerals. It was a period unlike any in all my years as a rabbi. During it all, I like to think that I was a really devoted rabbi, but I will confess to you that it took a toll on my family. With me working nonstop to keep our synagogue afloat, and my wife doing the same for her school, we were all work all the time. Kids are resilient, we assured ourselves. Except our youngest son wasn't, and it got ugly. Before the pandemic, our youngest son loved the first grade. Everything about it made him smile. And then it was all shut down, put online, and into isolation and lockdown we went. While Deborah and I were physically present, we were not available. And our smiling, creative, energetic 7-year-old crumbled. He was not alone. Thousands of children, millions of people, and to some extent, all of us, we have all suffered. We have all felt sadness, despair, and hopelessness of our lives turned upside down. As we gather this morning for Yom Kippur, the sadness and despair continues to tear at the very fabric of our souls, and it begs a question. With the burdens of the world already weighing us down, how do we add the weight of Yom Kippur? It reminds me of a famous Hasidic legend about Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. Let me just pause by telling you or reminding you that 18th century Poland was not exactly hospitable to Jewish life, and fierce anti-Semitism often ran amok. This one year was particularly bad, leaving the community tormented and scarred as it gathered together for Yom Kippur. At Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's shul, the speaker for Kol Nidre ascended the pulpit, and as was customary in those days, began to lash out, criticizing the community's behavior and lack of devotion. The tear-filled eyes of the community turned to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and waited. I want to return to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak in just a bit. But before doing so, I want to further explore why this day feels so similar to that day back in Poland over 200 years ago. Let's begin by looking at the present day New Haven, Connecticut. A year or so before the pandemic, Yale University offered its most popular class in the university's 300-year history, Psych 157. More than 1,200 Yale undergrads enrolled in Psych 157 in order to study psychology and the good life. So what was the attraction? According to the course's instructor, Lori Santos, the course was designed with a simple goal in mind: to help students live more satisfying lives. Dr. Santos speculates that the course resonated with students because so many of them had adopted harmful life habits in order to achieve the academic success necessary for admission at a school like Yale. According to Santos, these harmful habits formed in high school and then carried over into college, and it led to a mental health crisis on campus. With more than half of Yale's undergraduate population receiving some type of mental health care at the time, Santos had her finger on the pulse of Yale life. As one undergrad enrolled in Santos's course put it, in reality, a lot of us are anxious, stressed, and numb. Of course, it's not just at Yale. So many of us feel that same way. Estimates are that close to 40% of our country are dealing with an adverse mental health concern. And there is real concern that once the virus is finally under control, we will all be dealing with a new phenomenon for years to come: COVID anxiety syndrome. This brings me to today, Yom Kippur. Of course, I know that today is our holiest day of the year, a day of intense introspection and self-correction, where we confront all of our inadequacies and ways we have come up short. But this year, after all that we have been through, the isolation, the countless months since we hugged one another or sat in one another's homes, the millions of babies born into a world where they only know faces with masks on them from 6 feet away, and now just when we thought we were in the clear, the resurgence of the virus, after it all, we need something different. Even without COVID, Yom Kippur occupies way too large a place in our Jewish identity. About 4 or 5 years ago, before Yom Kippur, a member of my synagogue asked to speak with me about something urgent. We met for coffee, and he confessed that while he was proud to identify as a Jew, he decided he was no longer going to attend synagogue services. I remember him sharing, "Rabbi, I love being Jewish, and every year on Yom Kippur I come to the synagogue hopeful. But our prayers, they're just never-ending string of confessions and guilt. It's so negative and dark. I can't do it to myself any longer. I am done with services." I heard him out and then responded, "Maybe you would feel differently if you came on Shabbat." I didn't mean it to be rude, but I went on to explain that Judaism is a religion that affirms celebration. We embrace joy, simcha, as a foundational value. There is no greater expression of this joy than Shabbat. Yom Kippur offers a spiritual balance and counterpoint. It provides a meaningful opportunity for difficult self-reflection. But the confessions and asceticism of Yom Kippur does not define everyday Judaism. Yom Kippur is once a week, but Shabbat is celebrated every week because Judaism assures us that we are worthy of celebration and our lives should be lived in rich and meaningful ways, happy ways, with the same goals set by Psych 157 at Yale University. And that is why, if you are here only one day a year, I hate to tell you, you picked the wrong day. A positive, vibrant Jewish identity cannot be built upon a foundation of Yom Kippur. And now, after all of our pain and suffering, for the sake of our own spiritual and mental health, we cannot be Yom Kippur Jews. And I am talking about something far more important than synagogue attendance. We cannot be Jews where Yom Kippur is the foundation of our religious and spiritual identities. We need to be Shabbat Jews, people who affirm that we are worthy of celebration, love, and connection. It reminds me of an article I read about Andrew Rannells. As many of you know, Rannells is an accomplished actor. He was in that HBO series Girls. He was nominated for a Tony Award for his role in the Book of Mormon, and he played King George in Hamilton. When the pandemic hit, in order to raise money for all the unemployed stage actors, Rannells decided to join Cameo, a service where celebrities are paid to record short, personalized videos for fans. Rannells recalls that he was initially surprised that most of the messages he was hired to record were not happy birthday or light-spirited greetings. Instead, Rannells heard from people seeking messages of encouragement. You are okay. You are enough. You are going to be all right. And that's when Rannells, in the thick of COVID and all alone in his apartment in Manhattan, had a self-realization. The more I told people that they were okay, that they were enough, that they would be all right, the more I realized how much I needed to say those words. I was in need of connection. I was in need of comfort too. It's not only true for Andrew Rannells, it's true for all of us. After the struggles, the heartbreak, and the loneliness of COVID, we all need to hear that we are enough, that we are worthwhile, and we need to feel the comfort of connection. That is why we need to step away from how we currently observe Yom Kippur with all the shame and guilt. By the way, it wasn't always this way. Before the destruction of the Second Temple, in the afternoon of Yom Kippur, the young men and women of Jerusalem would head out into the fields. With the sun setting and glistening behind them, the girls would dance in flowing white robes, and the boys, lightheaded from a day of fasting, would approach a girl and hopefully make a connection. This ritual describes the way Yom Kippur once was observed and can now hopefully shape the Jews we can be. Even on the most solemn day of the year, we can stop beating our chests expressing remorse, and instead, in celebration of who we are and what we offer, we can dance into the fields of life and find connection and love. We all hope the sun is beginning to set on this pandemic, but wherever we are on the COVID timeline, like our ancestors in Jerusalem, the hour has come for us to dance in the fields. For surely, even on Yom Kippur, we recognize that broken hearts, that beating them serves no purpose. Challenging the sunken spirit yields no gain. The authors of the Torah, they understood this. And when they were introducing the idea of Yom Kippur, they sneak in a surprising description of the day. The Torah calls Yom Kippur a Shabbat Shabbaton, which can be translated as the Shabbat of all Shabbats. How can this day be both a day of solemnity and a Shabbat of all Shabbats? I imagine that the authors of the text recognized that left unchecked, self-denial leads to self-neglect. And therefore, the Torah reminds us that self-deprecation cannot be the sole path to self-discovery. Atonement for mistakes of the past can also be achieved by celebrating in the present. And that, yes, even Yom Kippur can be the Shabbaton, a grand Shabbat. More than ever this year, we need to observe Yom Kippur as the Shabbat of all Shabbats. And in the midst of the celebration, we need to give ourselves the most valuable gift, self-compassion. For this year, perhaps more than any in our lifetime, we need simcha, joy. We need Psych 157 at Yale. We need to love ourselves as much as we love others. Like Andrew Rannells taping a message for his fans on Cameo, we need to hear that we are okay, that we are enough, and that we deserve love. For the sake of the survival of our spirit, let us transform Yom Kippur from the slumber of solemnity to the Shabbat Shabbaton. Like our ancestors in Jerusalem, we can dance in the fields of our future with joy, assured of who we are and the gifts that we bring. For we are Shabbat Jews, people worthy of celebration and love. I imagine that this is what Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev was feeling that Yom Kippur evening in Central Europe, in Central Poland 200 years ago. As the speaker tore into his already fragile community, sensing that with all of the sadness of the difficult year, his community could take no more, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak went on the bima, silenced the speaker, and shouted, "Stop your scolding. These are God's holy children. This is a time for rejoicing." And then Rabbi Levi Yitzchak opened the ark, took out the Torahs, and like the residents of Jerusalem in the fields, he danced with his community on Yom Kippur. Let the light of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's example illuminate a new way for us to see Yom Kippur. This year, as darkness abounds, may this Yom Kippur herald a new era of healing and self-affirmation, where the clarion call of the Tekiah Gedolah resounds in our souls, reminding us that we are worthy, that we are good enough, that we are holy, and that we are loved. Gamar Chatima Tova.